Well, we are going to go ahead and start. So, Tom, will you go ahead with your training then for secretaries?
Well, thank you, Dan. I'm pleased to be able to meet with everybody today. And the intent of this meeting is to make sure our chapter secretaries are really, really good and that they can help every officer in the chapter in their jobs. Now, how does good chapter secretary do this? First of all, a good chapter secretary follows and performs the duties that are assigned. Those duties are listed in the uh, national website. They're also listed down here, as you can see, the prime duties: creating and disseminating excellent agendas and minutes for officers and chapter meetings, the preparation and dissemination of chapter newsletters, keeping accurate contact lists of members and potential members, and if necessary, assist with printed programs for chapter meetings, prepares and submits reports to the national office. The good chapter secretary will also greatly assist the chapter in pursuit of the National Chapter Award of Excellence. Now, I don't want to talk about the bottom part of this, but I want to go to several things that hopefully you can use as resources, not that they're the best. Let's go to the second resource there, Jason, if we can. Hopefully a chapter secretary is on the ball every month and working in connection with every other chapter officer in producing chapter officers meeting agendas. Now, I've given you an example of what we do in the Timpanogos chapter here. Scroll down a little bit there, Jason, if you would, if you can. That's enough. Every chapter agenda that I send out as a chapter officer, I send out a draft to every officer in the chapter, asking for any corrections, any additions, or any deletions that they want. But a chapter secretary, usually, if he's been in there for some period of time, pretty well knows what's happening in the organization and pretty well can help the other officers in the chapter in coherent procedures. For instance, we look at the agenda as you see it. Obviously, invocation. At the chapter, Timpanogos chapter, we always have the minutes first, the treasurer's report second, and then the finance discussion. And the programs, very important. Our director of programs covers who's going to be coming up in this particular agenda. We have Governor Gary talking about his modern day Pioneer Award that we gave to him. You see the chapter meetings, number 7 there. We needed a new system for meetings, so our chapter officers talked about that. Number 8, we needed a trail marker chair. So you see the agenda that is built by the secretary and given to the president of the chapter and every other officer for their review. They, most of the time, add a thing or two or say, well, we probably need to wait another month to talk about that.
Any help with this?
Let's go down a little bit. You'll see the nominating committee report. We have a calling committee, number 10, in the Timpanogos chapter. And we always talk about the meetings, the chapter newsletters. You can talk about that. Membership, we always talk about that. Scholarships. You see down at the number 17, every chapter officers meeting that we have, we talk about the National Award of Excellence. And at this particular topic in October, we needed to talk about the Pioneer magazine. So we were sure that the Timpanogos chapter qualified in that particular category. Now, any questions on this sample agenda? There's other types of agendas, and I think we would, down at the bottom, of course, the national calendar. In October, it gets kind of short, but in our January meetings, we always list the SUP, DUP days, the parade, and all of the national activities. An agenda will add a professional attitude to the meeting.
The national office, of course, the secretary, Bruce Stewart, up there in the National Library, has he collects all the histories for all of the chapters. And so one of the things that I think the secretary, and we'll get to that too, that's a part of the history of each chapter is what not only the minutes, I mean the agenda, but the minutes. The minutes really is the agenda with meat on it and with the decisions and things that are taking place and helps you move forward. So why don't we go ahead with the minutes then, Tom?
Thank you, Dan. That's that good introduction to minutes. Let's put the minutes up here with Jason. I think we'll just go through this very quickly. If you take time to read these minutes, you'll see that they somewhat mirror the agenda. And I use the word mirror simply because as meetings go, sometimes the conversations go to different points, and sometimes the agenda is discussed at a different time of the meeting. I would say that it's my understanding that as long as the minutes reflect what was said in the meeting, it doesn't necessarily have to flow in order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that type of thing. I may be wrong on that, but I've understood that for many years in the past. Jason, if you scroll down just slowly on this, you'll see that basically, and another thing too, by the way, you'll see, for instance, on number 8, per the nominating committee report, we always record who makes a motion, who makes a second, and whether it was approved or whether it was postponed or discussed. That helps to verify what happens in the meeting. But you'll see that the minutes of this meeting basically follow the agenda that we just took a look at. Go ahead and scroll down there if you would. Are there any questions? Now, I would say too, by the way, I had this to say also, every chapter should be sending minutes of their officers, well, their meetings, their chapter meetings especially, and the newsletters to the national office. I don't know, sometimes the officers, I don't think we send the officers meeting agenda, but the other agendas we do. Just go to the newsletter. This is the February 2024 newsletter. We're blessed to be able to have Les Langford as our president. He does this first page mock-up. He emails it to me. I snip it and put it into the newsletter. So we're very blessed to be able to have a good person doing these pictures. Scroll down if you would there, Jason. What are the important parts of the newsletter? Oh, stop. Okay. You saw up above in the pictures who the speaker was going to be, but we also ask everybody to bring a friend. We tell them the amount, where it's going to be, and go from there. In our newsletter in this particular month, we need photos of different members. Go ahead and scroll down. We decided as officers we needed to have a no-show policy because we have some members that are ordering meals, but then not showing up to pay for them. And then in almost probably at least 10 of the 12 months of the year, we always have a pioneer article from one of the members of the chapter, which adds interest into our newsletter. Go ahead and scroll down further, Jason, if you would. We, most of the time, try to include the mission and the values. Scroll down. Of what the mission statement of what the organization says. What are your thoughts on newsletters?
One thing that we do is when we have a new member come in, we have that person write a bio and we put it in our newsletter so that everybody gets to know them.
I use the newsletter, have used the newsletter as just an announcement for our speaker and to get them excited about coming. So I send that out, 2 or 3 weeks before we have our meeting, and then we're able to use that as a invitation uh, to our members and for them to share with friends if they wish to come information about the speaker.
Yeah, I use the newsletter as both a past, present, and future. What the chapter did in the last month, kind of a report. What we're doing for the dinner, for the meeting, and then events coming in the future. So I use it to kind of cover all of those, and it just rolls along each month and changes as the months progress.
I think it's really important to include, give some responsibility to various board members. For example, programs or any of the board members that involve scholarships. If they have input, I think it's a good policy to let them contribute to that newsletter rather than just trying to do it all with one person.
Let's go to the next, the chapter agenda. But this is simply an example that people could use, any of your chapter secretaries and presidents can use, and change it as you want to. We don't always have a song. We normally, down here in number 11, we have a vignette most of the time. And then the speaker, of course, entertainers. We always try to have a future reminder and a thanks for all the coming. What are your comments on your agendas in your chapters? What do you do?
We don't usually have an agenda that we put up, but we do have a program, which might be considered an agenda. This step by step our allegiance and our prayers and our speakers and whatever we might have prayers, and that would be our agenda in effect.
Any other comments about agendas? If not, let's go to minutes. The minutes, I feel, should be not only accurate, but they should, in a way, be concise with plenty of meat on them, because we send the minutes of the meeting not only to our national office every month, but we also have a number of our chapter members that for various health reasons cannot come to meetings. And they have told us a number of times, we are thrilled to be able to get the minutes. We love being members of the chapter. We're in a rest home. We don't get out of our location where we're living, but we keep in contact and know what's happening because of the minutes of the meeting. Therefore, we try to make them as complete as possible. And we've had a number of our chapter members thank us for the minutes that we send out.
I think
Jason, go ahead. These minutes, as you see, they'll have the announcements. Scroll down there, Jason, if you would. And Shauna Valentine gave a vignette. Keep scrolling. After the vignette came the introduction of our speaker, right there. Whoop, just above there. Cammie gave, Bill Spence, our program director, gave the speaker introduction. And then Cammie McKinney gave an outstanding, very outstanding presentation on the American Fork Canyon, which we've tried to capture in the minutes of the meeting. Okay, scrolling down again. Now, I've got to tell you that sometimes the minutes take almost a full day for me anyway to put together. But I think it's worth my time to be able to do it, just simply because of the comments that we have of people that appreciate them. let's go to your comments now on what you do for minutes.
Well, Tom, one thing that I know that you do, and that is that you ask the person who does the vignette to give you a copy of the vignette. And the person that is doing the presentation, a lot of times will have an outline of what their presentation is about. And so they can just give you a digital copy of that, and then you can help to use it. I think that getting copies from the presenters helps a lot on preparing the minutes.
I would also say that as the Timpanogos chapter secretary, and the May chapter meeting minutes went out to 5 different people. I sent them out to a member of our chapter specifically to check the grammar, spelling, and basically how the thing is put together, whether it makes sense or not. And I do not send them out to anybody in mass until those 5 or 6 people basically have said everything's fine or this needs to be corrected. So a good chapter secretary does not need to be afraid of having his work checked.
I usually like to present a calendar, a yearly calendar. I call it the events calendar to glance, maybe, where I have just a little spreadsheet program that I can put events down for the entire year, and then create a printed page from that and send that out along with agenda, minutes, newsletter, and people can then just look at the events calendar and also have another way of seeing what's happening and what's coming up.
Okay. Jason, let's go back to the first point again. Let me change. We've been talking about some mechanical things. There's probably other mechanical things we need to talk about. For instance, secretaries could probably develop chapter letterhead, chapter envelopes. They could assist in photographs and things like that. But I want to talk about the mode of operation. A chapter secretary is a member of a team. We're not all individuals driving down a road. We each are in one vehicle, basically. And a chapter secretary has a relationship with all the other officers. All the officers should lend professionalism, but a chapter secretary can do that. In essence, he performs an authentic, useful, and necessary business organization in support of the mission statement. A chapter secretary usually stays on board a little longer than other officers, like the president. Most of our chapters, we have a president-elect, president, and a past president, and then maybe the chapter of the president is either released or goes on to other things. But I want to emphasize professionalism here, simply because years ago in the Timpanogos chapter, when I first started attending chapter officers meetings, it was really kind of we're here, what are we going to talk about today? And a chapter secretary led the opportunity of putting the chapter together in a kind of a business way, if you will. A chapter secretary, how many of you as a chapter secretary are basically the informational officer answering the questions or giving assistance? Let's talk. Also going to talk about 4 on a sheet before we go to the next little bit here. Number 4 is the minutes of meetings. A good chapter secretary, as we've already discussed in this training session, is also kind of a historian, or he can be helpful to whoever the historian is in your chapters. Number 5 is a good chapter secretary is also a motivator. Every one of us have a different personality. Some are more outgoing, some are quiet. We've got a lot of different personalities, but all of them should be motivators in one way or another and committed to the goals of the Sons of Utah Pioneers to help lift the spirits and feelings. So the good chapter secretary is a constant reminder of the importance of the work and the needing to connect to success of the chapter in a way which fulfills a positive result in meeting the objectives, the goals, the purposes, and especially the mission of the Sons of Utah Pioneers. Are there any questions on what we've talked about so far, or any other thoughts on that we can share with each other to help all of us understand better ways of doing things in our chapters?
Thing I do only because I can't keep up with all the discussion just by scribbling notes on a paper, and then when I get home, I can't read them anyway. So what I do is I take a little recorder and I record the happenings of the minutes. So I spend almost twice the meeting time because I'm going through the recorder again, and then I extract and match them with the notes I do have, verify my notes were correct.
One comment that I have is we all see the importance of secretary, the all-encompassing job that is, but it's really easy for the secretary to be so much in the background that no one even knows who that secretary is. For those chapter presidents that are listening at this time, I think it's really important that we periodically make a point to recognize that secretary and the work he's doing at the chapter meeting.
Okay, I'm going to summarize here real briefly. In essence, the good chapter secretaries is not just someone who knows how to put together items on agendas or words in minutes. Rather, the good chapter secretary is a significant part of each part of the chapter, of each team member, and each thrust forward on what the chapter does. Thus, a good chapter secretary is a person who helps things happen in a consistent, successful atmosphere filled with not only professionalism, but also fellowship and fun. Whether the individual's personality is quiet or outgoing, the good chapter secretary is there and is known by the attributes of success. Thus, the position becomes an integral and extremely vital function of the chapter. So thank you for coming to our chapter secretaries training today.